بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على عبده ورسوله نبينا وإمامنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. The trip to the United Kingdom, this being our second trip, just like our first trip back in November, and here to this Masjid today, to be honest, has been and is, and inshallah, in most cases, when Allah knows best, will be very humbling for myself. Just a few days ago, I was in Toronto, Canada. We've been traveling for some time now. Started in California, from California to Toronto, Toronto to the United Kingdom, back to the United States, all before the month of Ramadan. There is, alhamdulillah, a strong base for Islam and for Muslims in general. And I have many friends there, many teachers there, many students, many supporters, many disciples and disciples there in Toronto and also in Ottawa. But just from this trip coming from Toronto, when I landed in JFK, LaGuardia, it was LaGuardia Airport I landed in. We normally travel back to JFK, but we landed in LaGuardia. A friend of mine contacted me from Toronto. And I've known a brother for some years, walillah alhamd. We've benefited from each other. I've learned a lot from him. He's younger than me. Alhamdulillah, very knowledgeable, smart brother, hafid of the Quran, mashallah. He said, Mufti, when you started studying and when you began your journey and your spiritual enlightenment, what was, your vision, or what dreams, or what did you think it was going to be? Did you have any idea that it would be anything like how it is today? And I told him no. I said in my wildest imaginations, my wildest dreams, I never thought that I would travel here to learn, or travel there to teach, or I would meet so many different brothers and sisters, obviously more brothers, that are total strangers, that walk up to you. You may be in the airport, you may be sitting down, you may be walking down the street, and a brother, he comes up to you and he says, I watched your video, or I benefited from this lecture, or you inspired me to do this, or I'm going to the Islamic University of Medina. Just yesterday in a bookstore, we met a brother who was a total stranger. He said, I'm going to Medina, and I'm going to go study in the College of Hadith because of you. It's something that we never thought of. We never dreamt of. We didn't have any clue that Allah Azza wa Jal, through His grace and His mercy, would take us to the locations and the situations that we've been to, walillah alhamd. And for one person to meet you in a city or town and to ask you about a lecture that you gave in another country, in another place, obviously that's a further coding, that's another layer of depth. Just now, the brother came up to me and says, I watched your lecture in Malaysia. So what are the chances that we will go to Malaysia and give a lecture? And that someone from the United Kingdom will watch that lecture and be inspired and take the advice and so on and so forth. So the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, without any doubt, you cannot count. You can't begin to count them. وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا. If you counted the favors of Allah, you couldn't count them. That's the literal translation. The literal translation. وَإِن تَعُدُّوا. If you counted them, you couldn't count them. So does that make any sense? How can you count something but you can't count something? But that's not what's meant here. What's meant here is that if you attempted to count, if you sat down and tried to count the favors of Allah, you would go mad. You may lose your mind. Where do you start about the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And Allah Azza wa Jalla, He also says, وَأَتَاكُمْ, and He has given you everything that you've asked about. كُلُّ مَا سَأَلْتُمُوهُ. Everything that you've asked Allah for, He has given you. And that's also misunderstood. وَآتَاكُمْ مِنْ كُلِّ مَا سَأَلْتُمُوهُ وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا. Allah Azza wa Jalla has given us things that we haven't asked for. He has given us things, He has blessed us with blessings that we never asked for. But we needed those blessings. And some of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's slaves deserve those blessings from Allah's grace and from His kindness. So the point that I'm trying to get to is that oftentimes we laugh and we joke, or oftentimes we complain, we fight and we argue, or oftentimes we may become tired or lazy or lethargic, or oftentimes we may just do things out of habit, and we lose focus and we lose touch of the reality of these types of trips. The trips in which is a blessing of Allah, and it's something that you never thought about, you never imagined, you never pictured, and you never know where Allah Azza wa Jalla will place barakah. And you never know who Allah will allow to benefit from you and learn from you and to be inspired from you. And with that being said, me being the speaker, the center of focus and attention of the trip, I'm telling you, and the best information, as we say, comes from the horse's mouth. It's very humbling experience. And oftentimes it's surreal. It's like, is this really happening? Are we really here in this continent, in this country? Did we just take a 20-hour flight, a 17-hour flight? Did we just go through 3 time zones? Is this really what's going on? These people who have a different language, a different culture, a different race, sitting down on their feet and on their knees, at your feet and your knees, asking you questions. Yes, Sheikh, teach us, guide us, so on and so forth. You changed my life. I had a dream. You inspired me. I stopped doing this because of HadithDisciple. I started this because of HadithDisciple. About a month ago, there was a brother who commented on our videos. He said he used to be an atheist. He rejected God. He rejected Islam. He rejected Deen, let alone Islam, Allah. He rejected the concept of the creator of God. And he says, I started watching your videos and I came back to Islam. I came back to Islam because of your videos. Where's Alameen? I sent you the screenshot. I'm not making this up. There's no fairy tale to make things seem which they aren't. It's reality. So it's very humbling, okay? And oftentimes you have to check your intentions. That's first and foremost, okay? As one of the pious predecessors said, when he began his journey and his quest for hadith, he says that when I first started seeking hadith and learning, I thought that there was only one intention that you needed. There's only one intention for your general study in search of hadith. He says, but as I continued to learn and study and I was humbled, he says, فَإِذَا بِي أُدْرِكْ أَنَّ كُلَّ حَدِيثٍ يَحْتَاجُ إِلَى نِيَّةٍ. He says, but then I realized and I discovered every single narration that I study and memorize needs an intention, needs a check of our ikhlas. Let alone the fact is that it's humbling. Allah humbles you. And oftentimes you ask yourself, you say to yourself, what have I done to deserve this? What have I done to deserve this? To have this honor, the honor of being able to call to the sunnah and teach and propagate the hadith of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, and have young men influenced by you and inspired by you. No doubt that's very, very humbling. And I ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to make me grateful of that and to make me worthy of that and to bestow upon each and every one of you all of His blessings in this life and in the hereafter. Allahumma ameen. With that being said, brothers and sisters, I would like to thank our host, alhamdulillah, and the young brother who recited the Quran. Jazakallahu khairan. May Allah increase you. From Surah Al-Isra, which is one of my favorite surahs in the Quran al-Kareem, and is one of the most interesting surahs in the Quran al-Kareem, which is oftentimes called Surah Al-Isra, what was known to many of the Sahaba and many of their predecessors as Surah Bani Israel. That was the more popular name of the surah. Surah Bani Israel, the chapter of the children of Israel. For obvious reasons, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He speaks about the children of Israel. And about Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, وَآتَيْنَا مُوسَى الْكِتَابَ وَجَعَلْنَاهُ هُدًى لِبَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ أَلَّا تَتَّخِذُوا مِن دُونِي وَكِيلًا. Allah, He talks about the Jews, He talks about the people of the scripture in this surah, and the covenant, and the agreement, and the pact that they had, and that they were supposed to keep and uphold. And we obviously know things didn't necessarily work out in the way in which they were supposed to work out from their aspect. Allah knew what would take place and what would happen. So Surah Al-Isra, it teaches us about Bani Israel and Musa. It teaches us about how Allah, no matter what the odds may be, or no matter what difficulties may arise, and no matter what problems will ensue, Allah will support His deen. Allah will support and He will aid His chosen slaves. And that was manifested in the Isra and in the Mi'raj. Something that was miraculous, something that was paranormal, something that was supernatural, as a means of proving and establishing that this man named Muhammad, whom you all know, is not a liar. And that he did receive divine revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that nothing will remain the same in this dunya. The only thing which is promised, a wise man once said, it wasn't a Muslim. He says, you can't expect anything to remain the same in the dunya except for change. Things will change. And the Isra and the Mi'raj was a pivotal step in the change of how the Muslims lived, leading towards the Hijrah. And obviously when they went to Medina, we know everything, that was the beginning of the end. Al-Isra wal-Mi'raj was the beginning of the end. The Meccan period and how the Muslims lived and the difficulties and the problems that they faced, things were now changing. And that was a sign that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He manifested in the Isra and in the Mi'raj, and the things that took place on that miraculous night. And a very interesting fact, subhanAllah, if you look at it, the two main titles of the surah, there's a third title of the surah, some call it Surah Subhana, okay, but Surah Bani Israel and Surah Al-Isra, if you look at the two main titles, or the main themes, quote unquote, of the surah, they're also mentioned in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. When the Messenger of Allah made the ascension, he saw different people. He spoke to different people. He encountered different servants of Allah, of the prophets, of the messengers, and of the angels. But if you ask yourself, who was the last person that he spoke with? Who was the one who asked him certain questions? Who was the one who played a major role in our daily prayers that we make on a 24-hour basis? Who was that individual? It was Musa alayhi salam. And Musa was the master of who? Bani Israel. So the surah is called Bani Israel. It's also called what? Al-Isra. That's not an accident. That's not a what? That's not an accident. It could have been Ibrahim, it could have been Ismail, it could have been Idris, it could have been Isa. But he spoke to, the last one was who? It was Musa. And Musa told the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, go back to Allah and ask him for a lesser amount, because your ummah cannot stand 50 prayers. Your ummah doesn't have the sabr. Your ummah doesn't have the ability to do that. Why? Because I dealt with Bani Israel. Alajtuhum, he says, I have fought with them. Ashaddul mu'alaja, I fought with them. I've given them dawah. I've dealt with people that are stubborn and obstinate, cowardly. I've dealt with people that want to go back and forth. What color, what type of cow, etc. I've dealt with them. The ummah needs a what? Lesser amount of prayers. So I think that's a very interesting point of the two names and the two titles of the surah, let alone the other madghamin of that surah, such as the affirmation of the Aqidah of Islam, of monotheism, and the refutation of the Aqidah of polytheism, of shirk, and questioning the mushrikeen questioning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the other things that were mentioned in that surah, the Quran being sent down, the Quran being revealed, the guidance towards the Hijrah, etc. We're not here to talk about Surah Al-Isra or make a tafsir on Surah Al-Hijrah, but this is something which is food for thought. Food for thought. And I didn't have any idea or thought that he would recite that surah, and due to the fact that he did recite that surah, and it's one of my favorite surahs, I thought only befitting and only right to what? Share with you some fawaid with regards to some of the things that he recited from that surah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. So with that being said, brothers and sisters, change yourself this Ramadan. Changing ourselves and getting or obtaining change in the month of Ramadan. A very important topic. And it's a topic that has to be looked at from more than one angle and more than one perspective. So from one angle or from one perspective, we say that change is only in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's the only one who changes. And He's the only one who allows things, people, places, and situations to do what? To change from one aspect. And it has nothing to do with the slave or the servant, period. Allah changes you. If Allah wills, He will change you this Ramadan. And if Allah wills, He won't change you this Ramadan. And from another aspect or another angle, min nahiyatin ukhra, is that the slave, the servant, the worshipper, the Muslim, the Muslimah, he or she is responsible for change. You are the only one that can change yourself from one aspect. No one can change you but you. You cannot wait for a thing or a person to change you, but you yourself must change yourself. من ناحية ثالثة, from a third perspective or third angle, it is a combination and a balance, and it goes in more than one direction. A part of the change is in the hands of Allah, and a part of the change or a side of the responsibility and duty is with the servant. Everyone understand this? Another topic or another point of reflection with regards to change is why only change in Ramadan? Why not change in Sha'ban? Why not change in Shawwal? Why not go through constant change? Every single day, try to change yourself. The next point after that is change towards which direction? Change for the best or change for the worst? Some people in Ramadan, unfortunately, they may change for the worst. They may become further from the correct path. And there are others who come closer to the correct path. Another point of reflection or another angle is levels of change. Levels of change. There are some of us who take small, tiny baby steps. And there are those from among us who leap and who have thunderous footsteps, who jump and fall, and they climb and they soar. Their iman, their ibadah, their amal, their ilm, their generosity, their charity. And you can actually see a tangible effect of Ramadan on them. And then there are those from among us who we're in a 3-tier step. We have those who are doing bad, those who are doing good, and those who are excelling. So those who are doing bad, what is his goal for Ramadan? I'm not doing well at all. Okay, whatever the problem is that is affecting me. It's an issue of my prayers. It's an issue of girlfriend, boyfriend. It's an issue of drugs, alcohol. It's an issue of my hijab. It's an issue, whatever the issue is, me disrespecting my parents. Whatever the problem is that you're facing. What is my goal this Ramadan to change? Should I aspire for something high and lofty? Or should I aspire to just become efficient in the basics of Islam? Those who are doing good, but they're not doing great. What should their goals be? What should their aspirations be? What type of change should they look for during this Ramadan? To take it to the next level, spiritual excellence, or should they take a baby step? Wahakibah. Also the concept of change. What does change mean? Does change mean that it has to be immediate? Or is change gradual and progressive? Is it on a large scale that it can be seen immediately, felt immediately? Or does it take steps? I would understand this. These are all very important aspects to understand this topic with regards to changing in Ramadan. Excuse me. Sorry. Another concept is, with regards to change in Ramadan, is, do I have an option to change in the month of Ramadan? Do I have a choice on which package plan I want? Minor, micro, macro, major, what type of change in Ramadan, before Ramadan? Is there an option? Do we need a lecture on changing in Ramadan? Or is changing before and after Ramadan and in Ramadan something which is my obligation from the get-go? So all of these things are very important. And of course, last but not least is, if we realize the importance of change, and if we realize the necessity of change, and if we realize the nature of the world today is constant change, what are the practical steps to change? The tangible ways of actually changing. Do I just come to the masjid and that will change me in Ramadan? Does the sheer act of fasting change me? Does sitting in a class or a halaqah change me? Many brothers, they fell victim to this fallacy, this pre-assumption, is that when you go overseas to Medina, it's just going to change you, and that's it. And that's not necessarily the case. Rather, the change has to start before Medina, and it has to change after Medina. And when you're in Medina, you have to work very, 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 very hard to change your bad habits, the good habits, taken to excellent habits, and the list goes on. One of my teachers, before we get into the topic, he was speaking to us in the college once. Maybe it was my third year of the school or my second year, I'm not sure. He was discussing the tarbiyah of the students and how it's much more than just wearing a white Kuwaiti thobe or having 3 pins in your pockets. Even though most brothers never have 3 pins in their pockets, this is more my style. Or wearing Clark Wallabies or this type of expensive shoes overseas and this type of kufi and this type of hat and this is your tailor. Let's be honest now. The style of the Medina students, right? Especially the brothers who came from the UK. And think that being a student of knowledge and being righteous and pious is just about how you dress or who knows you or who you hang out with, etc. And he was talking about the reality that the students need real tarbiyah, a real honest tarbiyah. And he said that the university and the school, it only applies or it only gives you a small section of what you actually need. And the leaders, the government, the dean, the principal, the mudir of the school, and the jam and the kuliya, they know that you need more than what they provide in that school. And your scholarship is much more than just you coming to the university and coming to the college. And he said, why do you think you go to the Prophet's Masjid every day? Why do you think the Prophet's Masjid is an easy access for you? Why do you think there are buses that go to the Masjid for free? Why do you think we advise you to go study and review in the Prophet's Masjid? Nothing to do with classes and sitting in the halaqah, but you're just sitting in the Masjid every day from Asr to Isha. He says 4 years, 5 years, 8 years, 10 years of you sitting in the Prophet's Masjid every single day, drinking Zamzam water. He says that's a part of your tarbiyah, and that's a part of your change. And it's supposed to have an effect upon you. And if you sit in the Prophet's Masjid for all of those years, and it doesn't change you, something is seriously wrong. Something is seriously wrong. So with that being said, brothers and sisters, I want to read some things to you, bid'nillahi ta'ala, with regards to change, and with regards to some of the misconceptions that we have with the concept of change. What is and what isn't change? What is the responsibility of the servant and the slave? And that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala controls, which Allah controls all things, of course. But you understand the point I'm trying to get to? What aspect or ratio of the change is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Right. Allah Azza wa Jalla, He says in the Quran al-Kareem, in Surah Al-Ra'd, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. That whenever Allah Azza wa Jalla or Allah does not, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ. Whatever's wrong, quote unquote, that's the common translation. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ. That Allah does not change the wrong of a people, the backwardsness of a people. Allah doesn't change the problems that a people suffer from, حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ, until they change themselves. Or another translation, Allah does not change the status or condition of a people until they change the status and the condition of themselves. You've heard this before, right? Oftentimes, is that you have to help yourself in order for Allah, what? To help you. Allah will not change the problem of a people until they themselves take an effort, right? This is, in my humble opinion, the only translation that you'll hear of this verse. And this is the only interpretation that you'll hear of this verse. إِن تَنْصُرُوا اللَّهَ يَنْصُرْكُمْ. For Allah to help you and to support you, you have to help and support Allah first and foremost. احفظ الله يحفظك. Protect Allah, Allah will protect you, he said to Ibn Abbas. So they say that there is no change from Allah, the divine change, unless you yourselves change yourselves. But when you read many classical books of tafsir, you find that this translation and this concept is one of two things. Number one, it's either limited. This is one of the interpretations of the verse, and it isn't complete. Or you'll find in these classical books of tafsir is that this translation is actually wrong. This is a khata. And the interpretation of the verse is not correct. That Allah will not change the wrong of a people or the status of a people until they change themselves. Rather, you can find, inshallah, we're going to read to you, some of the ulama of tafsir, they say The meaning of إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. And the opposite direction. Allah does not strip a people of a blessing. Allah does not take a ni'mah from a people until they themselves relinquish the ni'mah. Listen carefully. Allah would not remove His blessings from a people until after the people themselves have disrespected the blessing and relinquished the blessing. And obviously that's a total different one, I would say. It's a total different understanding now of the verse. Everyone understand this? The mainstream interpretation, everyone agree with me or not? That's how you hear the verse. Allah will not help a people until they do what? Help themselves. Correct? But you'll find in many classical books of tafsir a different interpretation. Is that Allah does not remove a favor from a human being. He doesn't take a blessing from you. He doesn't take a blessing from a nation until after the nation has done what? Disobeyed. And not valued the gift that Allah gave them. You understand this? The difference? And we said that the interpretation is what? Shaitan ma bayna tafsirain. It's like night and day, these two interpretations. Everyone understand this? You with me? I mean? There's a what? Huge difference. You ever heard this interpretation before? In the United States? Muhammad? Never, not once. No lecture, no muhadara, no khutbah. In most cases, when you hear that verse, it's always in a what? A negative type of what? Context. Allah will not help us until we what, brothers? Help ourselves, which is not necessarily wrong. That's not wrong. But is that the interpretation of this verse? Everyone understand this or not? Right, moving forward. قال الشنقيطي رحمه الله تعالى إن الله لا يغير ما بقوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم وإذا أراد الله بقوم سوءا فلا مرد له وما لهم من دونه من وال. بين تعالى في هذه الآية الكريمة أنه لا يغير ما بقوم من النعمة والعافية حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم من طاعة الله جل وعلا. والمعنى أنه لا يسلب قوما نعمة أنعمها عليهم حتى يغيروا ما كانوا عليه من الطاعة والعمل الصالح. وبين هذا المعنى في مواضع أخرى كقوله ذلك بأن الله لم يكن مغيرا نعمة أنعمها على قوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم. وقوله وما أصابكم من مصيبة فبما كسبت أيديكم ويعفو عن كثير. وقد بين في هذه الآية أيضا أنه إذا أراد قوم بسوء فلا مرد له. وبين ذلك في مواضع أخرى إلى آخر كلام الشنقيطي رحمه الله تعالى. الشنقيطي, the great master of tafsir, he says in Adwa al-Bayan, and the students of knowledge all know the value of that book, Adwa al-Bayan. And the main focus of that book, Adwa al-Bayan, is Adwa al-Bayan fi tafsir al-Qur'ani ish bil-Qur'an. His main theme was to interpret the Qur'an with the actual Qur'an itself. That was his main aim in that book, was to interpret the Qur'an, not with the hadiths, not saying that's bad, not interpret the Qur'an with what the Sahaba said, not saying that that's what? Bad. Not interpret the Qur'an with lugha, with this, but interpret the Qur'an with what? The Qur'an itself, primarily. The first step and the first source of properly understanding the Qur'an is the actual Qur'an. And obviously, the world will be a better place if the people did this. You know what? Another verse, وَهَكَذَا. So Shinqiti rahimahullah, he says, listen carefully, he says this means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this verse has clarified, He's made it clear to us that He doesn't take a blessing, nor does He take afiyah, good well-being that the people are upon, prosperity. We have good health, we have safety, our political environment is good, the actual environment itself is good, we live well, our children, our wives, everything is good. Afiyah. Not perfect, but what? It's good. The quality of our life is good. We have nothing that we can complain about. Everyone understand this? Stop and think about this now. How many countries used to be like this? It was good at one point in time, before this army came, or this leader came, or before this revolution came, or before that issue came. This disease was unheard of in my country. This violence was unheard of in this part of town. This type of prejudice, we never knew this. That's called what? Afiyah. I lived, when I was young, I was so strong. 3 nights in a row, I could stay up without sleeping. I could do this, I played sports, then I got arthritis. Then I got cancer. Then I got diabetes. Then. Before then, you had what? Afia. Good well-being. He says that Allah is telling us that He does not strip a nation, nor strip a people from afia and from ni'mah until they disobey Him, until they rebel against Him, until they stop doing righteous deeds. And this is explained in other verses in the Quran, such as what Allah says in Surah Al-Anfal, that is because Allah would never take a ni'mah that He has blessed the people with until they change themselves. In the 53rd verse of Surah Al-Anfal. So this is just one example of what's meant by that verse, and that translation is either limited or what? Totally erroneous. And that's a big problem. When we start translating the Quran and interpreting the Quran in a way in which Allah Azza wa Jalla did not intend. That's not what Allah meant by this verse or that verse. Are we understand the point? So this is the foundation of the discussion of what? Change. Is that change doesn't always have to be from bad to good. But it could be from what? Good to bad. And perhaps that may be true with many of us. We allow Ramadan to come. We allow Ramadan to go. We allow the Taraweeh to start. We allow it to finish. I start my fast. I end my fast. But what have I really done for myself? What have I really done for myself? Allah allowed me to learn the Quran, to learn the Arabic language, to study. And I come back to the United States or to the United Kingdom and I don't teach knowledge. I'm busy chasing dunya, which could be permissible to chase. I'm busy talking about people. And I'm busy involving myself with politics or this or that. And then the next thing you know, you forget a verse. Or you can't quote it. Or you don't have the desire to teach it anymore. So change is not always one what? Dimensional. But it goes in different what? Directions. So let's ask ourselves here, which direction are we going in this Ramadan? Am I going to get better? Or am I going to become worse? Am I going to do the righteous acts of Islam and of Ramadan and then stop when it's over? Or am I going to continue my spiritual quest? Who was locked up and chained away in Ramadan? Was it the shayateen or was it my shaitan? Who was locked up? We have to ask ourselves this question. How can you come to the masjid every day in Ramadan, but you never have no time to come any other time? I'm busy. I have to work. My grandfather, my grandmother, or I'm sick, or the masjid's too far. But it wasn't too far for 30 days in a row. It wasn't too far for what? A month. Not a week, not 3 days, but a what? A month, straight, consistently, Fajr. But the Fajr isn't too early, or the Imam recites too long, or whatever the case, for what? For a month. Perhaps many of us may fall under this verse here. We did the right thing for 30 days. The 31st day we stopped doing the right thing, and then Allah may do what? Take it away from us. And once that ni'mah goes away, only Allah knows, does it have the ability of what? Come back. May Allah protect us from that. قال ابن القيم رحمه الله تعالى وهل زالت عن أحد قط نعمة إلا بشؤم معصيته فإن الله إذا أنعم على عبد بنعمة حفظها عليه ولا يغيرها عنه حتى يكون هو السعي في تغييرها عن نفسه إن الله لا يغير ما بقوم إلى آخر الآية. ومن تأمل ما قص الله تعالى في كتابه من أحوال الأمم الذين أزال نعمه عنهم وجد سبب ذلك جميعه إنما هو مخالفة أمره وعصيان رسله. وكذلك من نظر في أحوال أهل عصره وما أزال الله عنه من نعمه وجد ذلك كله من سوء عواقب الذنوب كما قيل إذا كنت في نعمة فرعها فإن المعاصي تزيل النعم فما حفظت نعمة الله بشيء قط مثل طاعته ولا حصلت فيها الزيادة بمثل شكره ولا زالت عن العبد بمثل معصيته لربه فإنها نار النعم التي تعمل فيها كما تعمل النار في الحطب اليابس. انتهى كلامه رحمه الله. Ibn al-Qayyim, he says, there's never been a favor that was taken away from someone except because of his sins. And that's because whenever Allah blesses a people or a person with a favor, Allah also protects the favor for them. Listen to these golden words. When Allah gives you a blessing, He also does what? Protects it for you. Look at the worldly life now. You buy an expensive automobile. Do you just leave the Mercedes-Benz? Or do they give you instructions? Do they give you a timeline, a calendar, when to come back in? We will send our guy out to your house to maintain your what? Your car. Because it's not an average car that you have now. This is a serious automobile. So therefore we, even though you've paid, you've bought it, you've purchased it, we don't need you anymore, correct? But because we are who we are, we're going to make sure that we do what? Take care of it for you. Everyone understand this? Is this not the case?
Yeah.
We're going to make sure that we do what? We take care of it for you. So Ibn al-Qayyim, he says that not only does Allah give the ni'mah, but he also does what? Protects it for the servant. Until the servant what? Ignores that protection. Until the servant does what? Ignores that protection. Ibn al-Qayyim says, and he is the one who strives hard to change it from himself. And then he quoted that verse. Ibn al-Qayyim says, whoever pays attention to the stories in the Quran and what happened to the previous nations, he sees that the only reason why they were punished and the only reason why those blessings were taken away from them is that they disobeyed him and they belied his messengers. They did not submit to the messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَكَذَلِكَ مَنْ نَظَرَ فِي أَحْوَالِ أَهْلِ أَصْلِهِ. Listen to this now, because that's ancient. That's archaic. That's in the past. The Quran was sent down 1400 years ago. How long ago was Fir'aun and Ad and Thamud? That's a long time ago. But Ibn al-Qayyim says, وَكَذَلِكَ مَنْ نَظَرَ فِي أَحْوَالِ أَهْلِ عَصْرِهِ. He who looks at his peers, meaning of the what? The current day. If you sit down and you think about yourself and your family, when did these problems come to us? When did we lose these blessings and bounties except after we what? Started fighting and started bickering. And we stopped practicing the religion. Allah gave this resource to our country and we took off our hijab. Allah gave us liberation. We established our own state. And then we started what? Attacking each other and killing each other and speaking of the dunya instead of the hunger that we had when we were fighting for freedom from this oppressive country. Think about this now. On a large scale and on a what? On a small scale. Was there ever something that was taken away from you by Allah? Think about it. Did Allah give you a blessing and then it just went away? Or honestly, we ourselves were the reasons behind our own undoing. We did not appreciate Allah's blessing and then it was what? Taken away. And in most cases, it's not returned back to us. And if it is returned, in most cases, it's returned generations later. Think about the world now, geography, think about politics. When this person traded on this one, when he stabbed them in the back for the power and the leadership, the country was never the same since. 50 years later, 100 years later, 150 years later, then they started restoring peace and stability to the region. But the country has been in turmoil, what? Ever since. And the same applies to your household and your family. And the same applies to your own what? Your own nafs. Ibn al-Qayyim, he says, this is the case. Last but not least, he says here, is that disobedience, it does to the favor of Allah what fire does to firewood. What fire does to fuel, to coal and wood. What does fire do? Burns through it, it consumes it. And that's what happens when you don't appreciate Allah's blessings. And that's what happens when you don't thank Allah Azza wa Jalla for his favors. To the end of Ibn al-Qayyim's speech. So with that being said, that part of the message I believe is extremely clear. So now guys, what should we do when it comes to the month of Ramadan? How do I know that I can change? The proof that you can change is the fact that you're in the masjid. The dalil that change is possible is that you're asking yourself that question. And if you didn't love Allah, you wouldn't be here. If you didn't want to do the right thing, you wouldn't have a guilty conscience. If you didn't realize the fact that you're lacking as a servant and as a worshiper, you wouldn't criticize yourself. You wouldn't criticize yourself. You wouldn't find fault in yourself. Someone who thinks that they're absolutely guided and there's no improvement, there's no spiritual enhancement, he doesn't criticize himself. But the one who feels and realizes that there's a lot of work that I have to do, and I need to change, and I need to get better, and I need to, you're on the correct path, but knowing is only half of the battle. That's only half of the battle. We mentioned in yesterday's khutbah The Abu Darda radiallahu anhu, he said, إن من فقه العبد أن يتعاهد إيمانه وما نقص منه ومن فقه العبد أن يعلم أن يزداد إيمانه أم ينقص ومن فقه العبد أن يعلم نزغات الشيطان أن لا تأتيه. He says, from the fiqh, the understanding and the intelligence, the wisdom of a servant is to look after his iman, to look after it. وَمَا نَقَصَ مِنْهُ, and that which you've lost already. And from the wisdom of a servant is to ask himself, is my iman growing or is it suffering? And from the wisdom of the servant is to realize how the shaitan attacks him. What is my weakness? Where do I slip and where do I fall? Listen carefully, guys. I need to change. That's a blessing to know that. But now, how do I change? And where do I start? Each and every one of you knows your own weaknesses better than the next person. You have a problem with sleep. You have a problem with eating. You have a problem with money. You have a problem with women. You have a problem with this. You have a problem with that. That is where you need to pinpoint your efforts. And you do not need to waste your time and waste your energy. It's not wasting, but you have to economize your time and your energy on other things. In Ramadan, you got to critically work on your bad habits and your flaws. And don't spend so much extra time doing other things and not actually what? Pinpointing and directing your efforts to your specific problems. And this is one of the greatest tricks of the shaitan. One of three things. Number one, the shaitan will get you to what? Forget about your problems and your mistakes, your shortcomings. The reasons for change, in other words. My mistake is a what? Is a reason for change. If he can't do that, then he'll get me to be conscious of change, but only in others. I only see the fault and the mistake in what? In other people. Last but not least, if the shaitan can't get you with those two things, then he will get you to be righteous, to come to the masjid, to pray, to fast, to make tarawih, but not place your focus, your time, your energy on actually what? Changing and fixing your problems. Everyone understand these three things here? So there's a huge difference now. And this is a practical step of actually changing. I'm coming to the masjid, but instead of me busying myself with this, I really need to busy myself with what? With that. Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah, once he asked his teacher, Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah. He asked him a simple question, but it's a very deep question. He says, أَيُّهُمَا أَفْضَلُ التَّسْبِيحُ أَمِ الْإِسْتِغْفَارُ? Which of the two is more virtuous? To say Subhanallah or to say Astaghfirullah? Which is greater? Which is more beloved to Allah? He says Istighfar, or someone may say a tasbih. Shaykh al-Islam rahimahullah, being the master ilm smith that he was, he didn't give an absolute answer, but he gave detail. And he says it depends on the circumstance of the servant. If the servant is obedient and observant and righteous, not perfect, but there are righteous, he says then he should busy himself with what? Tasbih. He should busy himself with that. Not saying that he never makes his istighfar, but his energy and his time should be what? Pinpointed on? Tasbih. And as far as if the slave is a bit sinful, the slave is a bit negligent, the slave is not in order 100%, he or she should busy themselves with al-istighfar. Why? How? He says, kathob, like a piece of clothing, a shirt. You don't put on cologne until after you've done what? You've taken a shower, let alone clean the actual shirt. You don't put on cologne, you don't smell good and you're sweaty and your skin is clammy and mucky. You have to wash up and scrub. Then you put on the clean clothes and then you spray the perfume upon yourself. And the same applies to a what? A shirt. If the shirt is dirty, the most important thing is what? It's to what? It's to wash it. Then you perfume it. So the shaitan, he plays this game. He plays this trick on the son of Adam. Come to the masjid, hypothetically speaking, tasbih, 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 tasbih. Ramadan, Taraweeh, Itikaf, mashallah, is wonderful. And he doesn't focus on actual istighfar and fixing the problem, patching the flat tire. Everyone understand this? So that's my Ramadan resolution, is to stop smoking cigarettes. My Ramadan resolution is not to make Taraweeh every night. My Ramadan resolution is not to feed 100 poor people. My Ramadan resolution is not to finish the Quran 2 or 3 times. Not saying that those things aren't virtuous. My Ramadan resolution is to drop my cigarette habit. Everyone understand this? Because what's the purpose of me doing all these extra acts of ibadah and I keep smoking, let alone if I'm smoking marijuana, let alone if I'm smoking cocaine or whatever else I'm smoking. It's a problem. Shisha, hookah, huh? Unfortunately. So the point that we're trying to get to is, y'all know what shisha is and hookah, huh? La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Huh? The point that we're trying to get to is what? Is that, brothers and sisters, there is a fiqh towards what? Change. That's the point of my talk. Is that change is not just a word that is said, but there's an actual what? There's a fiqh to it. There's a do and there's a don't. And the more you know of how to change, why to change, when to change, baby steps versus leaps, the easier it is for you to actually what? Change. And for us never ever to forget is that if we have a blessing from Allah the Mighty and the Most High, and we don't value it, we don't appreciate it, Allah will change things. And we will change. And oftentimes, our life is like a funnel. It's a wide entrance, a small exit. Easy to go in, and extremely hard to what? Come out. So be mindful of that. How easy it is to start smoking? Shisha. And how hard is it to actually what? Quit. And the same applies to other things as well. So with that being said, brothers and sisters, we ask Allah, the Mighty and the Most High, to allow us to change for the good in this Ramadan. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not to change His blessings and favors that He's bestowed upon us. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide all of the Muslim youth and keep them firm upon the Surah Al-Mustaqim, inside and outside of the month of Ramadan. We ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to make us good fathers, husbands, imams, and leaders. We ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to make us good wives, good mothers, good sisters, good women who have their role in the community as well. Allahumma ameen. Thank you very much for your time, for your attention, for your respect. Jazakumullahu khairan.
Jazakallah khairan, Sheikh. I just want to say from the whole community, we very much appreciate your wonderful words of wisdom, and again reiterate what the Sheikh said. May Allah Azza wa Jalla make it easier for us to understand and go forward. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give the Sheikh a long life with barakah and help him with his PhD and his struggles and his travels. On that note, there is food to be served downstairs, but before we go, as the Prophet ﷺ told us, we should read the dua after we finish any congregation and such as this. So subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Jazakallah.
Shukran.